Tuesday, May 31st, 2011. We will continue the budget hearings. Tonight, we start with the Police Department, page 29. We have Police Personal Services, $3,849,724. Benefits and stipend, $1,540,741. Total police personal services, $5,390,465. Police dispatch and dispatch, $121,322. Civilian staff support, $69,400. Total of $190,722. Police expenses, $39,200. Travel and training, $39,000. Vehicle and equipment, $228,800. Building and maintenance, $221,495. Bringing the total police budget to $6,109,682. Chief Demore, Deputy Chief Kearns, good evening. Any comments or statements before the councilors?
I think, once again, we always would like to say we're doing more with less, but we've done that in the last 3.5 years. We've actually reduced our force quite significant. And we are right now at probably the lowest levels we can possibly ever go to. Fortunately, I received some good news from the mayor that she's added an additional 6 dispatchers positions to bring it out to a total of 9 positions by September of this year, which will significantly allow us to put more officers in the patrol force, which is desperately needed for calls for service.
Councilor Reynolds.
Following what the chief just said, won't these figures be changed? And if they will be changed, why would we deliberate over in not up-to-date figures?
These are the numbers that are before us, Councilor.
Yes, I know, but we just heard of another plan.
I understand that, and we have been told that, and it's been in the newspaper, but we do not have those numbers before us, Councilor.
Yes, but we're sensible people. Why would we discuss over numbers that aren't going to be accurate?
If you choose not to discuss them, Councilor, go right ahead. I'm holding the budget hearing. You still have the floor, Councilor, or are you done?
No, I'm done. Do you understand my issue, though?
I understand your statement. That doesn't mean that I'm stopping the hearing.
Oh, I didn't ask that you to stop the hearing. I just said, what is the rationale? If we know that things are going to be changed and we don't know what the figures are going to be, why are we working with figures that won't be accurate?
Because they're the figures that are before us, Councilor. Councilor Joseph.
Chief, do you know how many patrol officers there were when we had a full complement of dispatchers 4 years ago?
There were 72 patrol officers in FY07.
So, I mean, just to say that we're going to put 9 dispatchers on, and that's going to add 9 police officers to the, to the roster or onto the routes, but we're really still net minus 18 officers.
Correct.
I mean, is there a plan to put more officers on in the next year?
Well, we have applied for the COPS grant, where there's 4 officers. We're hoping to get from that grant. That's this. We just applied for it the 25th of May. We're hoping to get some success there. And outside of that, I don't believe in the immediate future.
And the 9 positions that you would say will move out of the dispatch to get on the routes, what will that do for you that you don't have now? I mean, I know that you're already thin, but why 72 versus 54, and that makes it good coverage?
Oh, no. no, I'm not saying it's good coverage, I'm just saying, in FY07, the budget was $7.8 million. Today, it's 6.1, significant, say it's a $2 million decrease. Clearly, that decrease something had to change there, and typically in police agencies, it's personnel, and that's what it was. What caused that? We can all sit here and guess that for the next few hours, what caused the decline of the economy. But I think when you look at the significance right now for those 9 officers, to take them out of dispatch, to put them back in patrol, because as you read in the budget and in subsequent reports, that our overtime increased as a result of the not having the ability to backfill those positions. As we started laying off in since the end of FY08, those 5 officers that we laid off initially, now we're paying the dividends in that in some form of overtime. Because, and I think it's really important that we talk about this, is because we didn't reduce services either. We have the same amount of cruisers out there. We have 2 school resource officers, detectives in both the criminal side of the house and the drug side of the house. So we still have those 9 additional officers doing dispatch duties. So if we took them out, put them into the roles of patrol, they can then backfill when an officer's on vacation, sick leave, personal time, or any other time.
Do you see that on July 1st, you'll have 54 officers?
Correct.
Your retirements, people leaving, do you feel that you will have 54 bodies on July 1st?
Yes.
Okay,
That's what I'm hoping, that nothing, and we can't forecast the future.
okay,
You know, everybody hears rumors, and I'm just hoping that it stays the same.
okay, thank you.
Counselor Tran.
Chief, Deputy Chief.
Good evening.
On page 32, under the vehicle and equipment, I'm looking at line auto repair. Fiscal 0809 or 10, we didn't spend more than $48,000. Last year, understandably, we spent $70,000 because the vehicles were getting old. Since we've purchased 5 new vehicles, do we necessarily need to budget $60,000 for next year?
Can I answer that, Chief? We still don't have a mechanic, Mr. Tran, so everything still needs to be outsourced. And there were a few, since I took over responsibility for vehicle repairs, I got mostly everything fixed that I wanted to, but there are still some things hanging. Wagon is 11 years old. It's still in pretty good shape, but it needs some body repairs. It's probably going to be between $5,000 and $10,000 to fix that. We're still buying tires for these cars, and we didn't get rid of anything. We kept the oldest cruisers, even though they have a lot of mileage on them. We kept them, and the plan is that I have enough to do this. I can just run them in the wintertime and put tire chains on them. But I do expect that because they're all 2005s and they all have between 130 and 160,000 miles on them, that I will be able to use them during storm time, but they do require repairs from time to time. So that's, I mean, it was $70,000 this year. I'd like to still see that 60 still in there, just in case.
Now, that line just we allocate that fund to just the labor part of the auto repair, right? Or is it supplies,
that's,
because you have a
that's-
separate line for supplies?
That's everything. That's when that's like the cars that are serviced outside the building by private garages, that pays the bills for that. It also, we have the Public Works mechanic does come over and help us on weekends. Sometimes the Public Works Department's been a big help. They put the tire chains on for us, even though they're busy during storms. They've been a big help, and they have one mechanic in particular, or 2 or 3 have come over and helped us on weekends and do minor repairs to the cars, and we pay them overtime out of our overtime budget, which isn't reflected here. It's not a lot of money, but it's a big help.
And the supplies line?
Supplies. That's not cruiser supplies, although some cruiser supplies are in there. That's other things. We do use that that would be like fire extinguishers for car first aid kits and stuff like that. But we use that for that's like police related supplies. That could be stuff for the detective bureau. That could be stuff for for large-scale events when we have to, get flex cuffs and dusting kits and things like that for the Detective Bureau.
There's a 100% increase in towing. Can you explain what's that line item and why is there 100% increase in that, in the funding for that
Where are you
line?
looking? Oh, yeah. The towing, we left that there where the 100% it went up only $1,000. We're anticipating the removal of 2 vehicles in the city that have been, in one of them, I think, it's going to take a significant tow truck to get rid of it. And there's a place on Water Street that we're looking to tow a vehicle that's going to be a significant amount of money, that somebody has to bear the cost of that, to tow those. And then that's not covered under the agreement that we have with our outsourcing company. So those are 2 important things that need to get done. It's just, and they're going to be expensive, both of them. So that extra $1,000, I'm just guessing the price was probably $500 each to tow that and to remove it, to get rid of it. Versus where they're not towing it anymore because it's just been left there.
Okay, I'm curious because we signed a contract with CarStar and...
Correct.
And we're not using them for this, but you just answered my question. The line item under photography, why is there a 40% increase in that? What do we
this-
use that line item for?
The photography, just that. This year, we need to purchase some new photography equipment. We've been probably behind the 8 ball in that area. Our detectives are going out much more now since they've been in the past. So the equipment that they need is something better than what we've had, and it has to uphold the evidential rules of the state to make sure when we show a photo, it's a clear and accurate depiction of the item versus something from a small cameras that we use for accidents.
Because the numbers that stick out, I'm asking, is because in fiscal '09, we spent only $481. Fiscal '10, we spent $476, and then it jumped up
Yeah.
to $2,500, and now $3,500.
What happened there, if this could go back a few more years, Counselor, you would see that the photography budget used to be $4,000 or $5,000. That was when we were taking photographs in 35 millimeter with SLR cameras, and we've gotten away from that now. All the cameras are digital, and that was all a processing cost. We had used a local lab, and it was expensive. So we transitioned to digital cameras, so it went down, and really the cost of it is really not reflected here because it's printers and ink, but it's stuff that's absorbed throughout the whole building. So it's just they went to digital cameras, but they tried it. There's 4 or 5 detectives. Each one has a nice camera set up that they can take when they have to go to a scene, and now as they're getting older, we'd like to replace one every year, so a detective has a nice, that's the recommendation that the detective sergeant made to us, and we agree with it. And so the extra $1,000 would be to upgrade 1 camera setup for a detective this year.
Okay. Page 30. Patrol officers line item. There's a decrease of $152,859. What does that number represent?
The 152,859?
Yes.
I believe a decrease in the overall budget.
Is that
From-
due to the retirements that we're seeing, the 2
We-
officers retiring?
We had some retirements. We had some recent issues that took place in the city, on the department. 1 officer left, and what's the other one, Phil?
1 retired, and 1 was discharged.
Yeah, 1 was retired and 1 was discharged.
So that number represents the decrease of patrol officer numbers?
Yes. I believe that would have been approximately like 56.5 or something.
Okay. Does that include the officer that you mentioned that may be going on long-term disability?
No, that's nothing to do with it.
Next one is, I'm looking at the overtime chief on page 30, asking for a overtime budget of $450,000 for next fiscal year. Earlier you mentioned that there will be a supplemental budget submitted by the mayor asking to add an additional 5 civilian dispatchers, so we can put the 5 police officers doing dispatching out on the street. Now, with that supplemental budget, are we looking to this number to decrease at all?
I hope so. I hope so, plus utilizing some different strategies that we're looking at, because when a couple of things, if I can just speak on behalf of the overtime for a second. We had some incidents that are somewhat in our control and some incidents that are out of our control through negotiated rights, so over the course of the CBA with the unions. We pay an extreme amount in the court time, the personnel time, sick time, and training and vacation. Those probably represent half the overtime budget each and every year. In each one of them, court time is naturally when someone gets arrested and the officers end up going to court. They get paid for that. The personnel time is negotiated time off through the collective bargaining agreement during the course of the year, and that represents a significant amount each year. Sick leave, which is somewhat controllable. We've taken steps in that area. Captain Swizz has notified the patrol force and all the supervisors to to review each and every person that's out sick for more than one day. And then vacation time, which is a collective bargaining agreement also, in the collective bargaining agreement, that the officers take so much vacation. So when you look at, especially you look at the vacation time, sick leave time, personnel time, those three areas, we are typically right now backfilling if somebody takes a day off. We just don't have the officers on the shifts, enough officers on the shift to backfill where it doesn't cost anything. So to answer the first part of the question now, is that we're hoping putting these three officers, there's actually 6 and 3 that we already hired. 2 of them started today. The third one will be starting at some point. There's 6 others with the supplementary budget. Once they get on, we will then look at putting 3 additional officers on each shift to give us the ability to backfill those positions where it doesn't cost any overtime.
The last time you came in front of the council chief, you made a statement that several years back, you foreseen that the overtime budget would increase because we were laying out 5 police officers. Mm-hmm. And, I agree with you, because there's a correlation between the number of officers and the amount of overtime we spent. The more officers, you'll see the overtime going down. The less officers, of course, it's going to go up. I think it's a good idea that we're adding civilian dispatchers and taking out the police officers that are doing dispatching and put them on the street. That's something that I never agreed with, by using our officers as dispatchers, because they became officers, police officers, for a reason, not to sit there and answer phones. I don't believe by adding civilian dispatchers and putting these officers back in the street is going to solve our problem. Right? The problem that I see is that the amount of overtime we're going to spend, even though we're going to see some decrease, it's going to still be there until we actually increase the head count of our police officers. That line item there, the patrol officers that I mentioned before, the overtime part, where we had where we have a decrease of $152,000, that line item is a concern to me. What I'd like to see from this budget is replace the officers that we're losing this year, in addition to putting these officers who are doing dispatching onto the street. That's not what we're doing. This is the budget that I don't see something that we should be excited about. I'm not excited simply because someone's telling me, oh, we're going back to the old ways of doing things by putting the officers who are doing dispatching back onto the street. What I would have liked to see from this budget is doing part of that and either hiring new officers or replacing the one that we've lost last year and/or this year. That's the only way that we're going to see the decrease in the exorbitant amount of overtime that we've spent in the last 2 years. That's all I have for now. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Clark.
President, thank you. Chief, Deputy Chief. More questions about the dispatching, and realizing what your statement was earlier, Chief. But in front of us, we have 121,000 for the dispatches. How many dispatches does that take care of? Is that number 6?
3.
That's 3. Okay. So, that 3 includes what, other than salary?
Some stipends, and I believe some overtime. Some overtime. Because, Counselor, this is kind of important, that's why. So we hire, say we even had 9 dispatchers, at some point they take vacation. They'll be out sick. So there has to be some mechanism or some fiscal mechanism in there to pay a replacement for them.
Yep.
And that's why that was put in.
So on July 1st, and the mayor is saying that we're going to be getting more dispatches in September, but on July 1st, when this budget takes effect, what will we see for numbers on that date? Are dispatchers ready to move right in, or is this going to take training? Have they had training? What's the picture going to look like on the 1st of July?
2 started this week.
Okay.
2 dispatches started. There was a third that we made I believe it was a conditional offer of employment to, but he's got some military commitments, so we got to work our way through that, and we want to be sensitive to those issues, and we're not sure when this person's going to be available. That will pretty much, if I understand, it was Captain Swears and Sergeant Hester did a pretty good job of advertising this job and getting the candidate list and giving a test and all that stuff. And I understand pretty much the applicant pool from that first advertisement we did is pretty much exhausted. So in order to go after the next 6, we're going to have to go through the process again. And we're going to begin that as soon as possible with the advertisement. And hopefully, I'm not sure about the exact timeline, but we're looking at perhaps, advertising it as soon as possible. There's no reason we can't advertise it, resumes, and then we'll give an examination again and take it from there. And that's, I think, where the September date is probably coming from.
Okay, so we may have the monies ready there, but we're still looking for more people to round out those positions. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Connery.
Yes, just to comment on the personnel issue. Basically, this budget kind of putting the finger in the dike. We're kind of status quo for the present time as of the 1st of July. Hopefully that's going to improve, because I know as well as you, Chief, and Deputy Chief, that we're very deficient as far as personnel is concerned. We need more people on the street, and this is going to help solve some of the problems. I have a couple of questions away from the personnel issue. I'm looking on page 32, excuse me, under the heading Vehicle and Equipment, and I've noticed consistently over the years that we have $0 budgeted for firearm replacement. Are we replacing officers' firearms on a regular basis or in another area in this budget, or are we not replacing firearms?
We are. We're fortunate enough to have some money coming through grants that we're looking to utilize right now. That's a significant cost. One thing that we probably do more than anybody else is train in the firearm area, and our firearms are probably the best around that we have and utilize for every department around here. So yes, we do replace them when like, it's the bulletproof vest. You don't see much in these budgets for that, but there's grants that come out, or the potential to use grants that come out from, like the JAG grant or some other grant that specifically targets equipment, and that's what we do. We have been using.
I was a little concerned about that because I think some of the criminals on the street have some pretty high-powered firearms.
I mean, this year, the trainers, the department trainers, the armorers, wanted to look at replacing some rifles. We will be able to do that.
Just below that, motorcycle leasing, the $7,800 that's proposed for FY12, is that going to be for additional motorcycles?
For 2.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Cap.
These questions for the mayor. When could we expect to see a supplemental budget for the 6 dispatches?
The 6 dispatchers are actually already filed have they been filed? They will be filed by Thursday morning, so they're expected to be on the agenda for the council this month.
So we'll be adding it to this budget?
Yes, it'll be a separate process. Actually, you might be able to approve those before you approve the budget.
Okay, thank you. And then, Chief, this is a question. I'm trying to think in my head. You're down, projected FY11 was $2,600,000 for patrol officers.
Where,
Projected for FY, page 30.
yeah,
Halfway down the first section, a little farther, patrol officers, 54.
yep,
Projected budget was $2,600,000. See it?
yep, thank you.
Then, this year, you're $2,450,000. However, in my head, I'm trying to think of how many guys you lost this year.
I can tell you, we lost...
You lost it.
5.
I got 6. I've got an acting deputy chief,
Yep,
I've got 2 detectives, 1 woman was discharged, the other one left,
yeah,
and then you had 1 other senior officer leave this past year.
no.
I don't want to say his name.
No, that's okay.
So I'm seeing
5. We've 5. There's 5 this year.
Amico.
I think we included. Yeah.
He would be the 6th. But in any event, 6 senior officers, 1 being a acting deputy chief, it seems to me it's going to add up more than what your figures are. Unless they left in a half year and maybe that was, their
Some-
pay was amortized or?
Well, yeah, some just left.
Right, right. If with the addition of 9 dispatches, it'll bring your patrol officers back up to 63. And then 954.
Oh, no, we're not getting any extra. They'll be available in the street. We have 54.
Does this,
We have 54 officers now, police officers, including the 9
oh, you're right,
dispatchers.
yeah, right. But they're not on the street. The 54 is not on the street.
Right.
So only, in essence, you're only adding 9 guys to the street, but the same amount of officers, yeah.
Correct.
So no matter what, you're still down 18 or 20 officers, no matter what. Is there any other good ideas out there to get grants or to get other?
Well, there's short-term, we can look at bolstering the organization by looking at potential specials, reserve force. I've spoken to the union about that. That will increase the department for people, it will increase the amount of officers that can assist other officers. It doesn't increase the amount of officers on the police department.
A question about,
Counselor Caddy, the mayor would like to comment to that question?
sure.
I just want to mention that there's 2 sides to look at this. There's the revenue side, and then there's the expense side. We've been sort of discussing the expense side. The revenue side, if you look at the revenue pages in the beginning of the budget, you'll notice a few things. You'll notice that state aid on page 2 has decreased since the numbers that were referenced in terms of the 70-plus officers. Our total net state aid was $7,254,000. Our net state aid this year is $1,800,000. So revenues are up in the state. I know that things are still precarious, but that is a $5.5 million decrease per year. So imagine if we were able to get even a portion of that. This year, that was cut by about $790,000 net. So even if the state ever level funded us, for example, if they just level funded us between this year and last year, we would have $800,000 more to talk about. $800,000, I mean, you can do the math. That's a lot of police officers. So if the state can just for 1 year, fiscal year, just keep us whole and not take away money, we've actually done a lot in terms of negotiating with unions, in terms of getting the wages down, in terms of dealing with some healthcare changes we're hoping to do more next year, is you know, we can add officers if we even just try and get the state to give us the same amount of money. So that's been one of the biggest pushes, is the state's revenues are up. We're asking them for more money. Within that, you'll see, for example, the police career incentive, in which the state had said that they would pay us 50%. Of that, the $318,000 reflected in fiscal year 8, not even near 50%. And you can see that was dropped down. They're actually, the budget numbers we're looking at right now are about 17,000, so they keep sort of cutting that every year. So that's one big push, is to say to the state, if you're cutting local aid every year to balance your budget, if you're getting revenues that are higher, we want to see some of that coming back to cities and towns. Even if you made us whole to fiscal year 11, 10, 9, 8, you know, every one of those in terms of bringing us back to where we were in those years is going to be millions of dollars more to the city. So that's all I'll say, really, I think the fairest way, because we all pay taxes, especially into the state. You know, we want to see some of that back. And we've been especially hit hard. I think being one of the communities that's most reliant on state aid, we've really shouldered the burden of the state's cuts these past few years.
I'm not being critical. I'm just thinking that over my police career and 8 years being here, I've seen the police department go up and down in manpower several times. And just when you think that we're looking good crime-wise and we start reducing the department, suddenly you see a spike in crime because of the lack of manpower. And what happens is you don't have enough time to get people trained and back on the street. We've agreed last meeting it takes about a year. I think recently, and Councilor Connery spoke about it at the last meeting, there's been a spike in house breaks. And that's just hands-on policing, having the manpower and hitting the streets and finding the bad guys and arresting them, and your house breaks stop. Sometimes it's only 1 or 2 guys that cause all these house breaks, but it's all manpower. It's all people in uniform and hitting the streets. But Chief, something I've never been able to understand since it started was we have 2 school resources officers that work for the school system, and they come out of your budget. I've never been able to understand that. I think everybody in this room agrees that we need resource officers, but I don't understand why it doesn't come out of the school's budget and it comes out of your budget. That would be 2 more men. How did this system, you weren't even here, so it's hard to ask you, but Deputy Chief Kearns, maybe how do we reason that? When we were there, we didn't have school resource officers, and now, years ahead, we have less manpower, and we're paying for 2 police officers in the schools.
I just know they've always come out of our budget. They're always budgeted out of the patrolman's line item.
How about that question to the mayor? Why doesn't the school department pay for their own police officers?
They actually do indirectly. It counts towards net school spending, about $50,000 or $60,000 the months that the officers are in the school budget. It is, yeah.
But it still comes out of the department's budget. It's not reimbursed to the department.
If it doesn't come out of the budget in this particular way, then we would actually have a deficit in net school spending. It would have to increase the other line in this budget proportionally.
But when you tell me we have 54 officers, 2 of them are in the school, we only have 52 officers, because 2 of them are in the school. They're not working on the streets in the city. So it doesn't make sense to me that the school couldn't support their own officers in the school system.
It is included in the school budget. It's just, it's indirectly via our budget, counted as net school spending at the end of the day to the schools.
Yeah. But out of the police department's budget, 2 less guys. That's how I see it. I can't see it any other way, I'm sorry. Maybe it's a discussion for another day, but, you know, again, I'm very nervous right now about just getting through this summer with the amount of officers that we have, the stress that they go through, the calls they go to. There is not going to be any relief this summer, and I think that dispatchers are coming a little bit too late. By the time we get 9 of them, it's going to be September and the summer's over with. I just hope in the future, Mayor, that you see this as more of a necessity, no matter what state aid, whatever we're getting. We need the city protected, and we need to protect the officers that are working. And it may be the safety of the officers on the street, but it's also the mental well-being of the officers when they're under this amount of stress at work. And I think we've had this discussion before. The guys can't even take vacation days when they want them anymore, because there's not enough guys working, and if they put in for a vacation day, they're going to be refused. So they negotiate their vacation time, they get personal time, but when it comes time to use their vacation time, they're denied, because if they are given the day off, it creates an overtime, and it costs the city money. So I think the chief, we had this discussion earlier that guys aren't getting, they put in a request for a day off and they're not getting it. And I just think we've let the manpower go way too low, and we're heading into a hot summer. It hasn't started yet, with very low staffing. You know, it is what it is. I can't see anything that we can do right now, but I'm just hoping if we get through the summer, that next year we look ahead and we start thinking about putting more manpower in the police department. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
I'll just come out and say it. This budget for the police is a disservice to the people, and it's not your fault. And 52 officers on the street for the city of Fitchburg, this size. This is the #1 budget in the city, and it's not being treated that way. First, I want to make a comment about this budget package. Next year, I hope we have budget numbers on here. I think Councilor Joseph brought it up last week. This is deceiving. The FY11 projected, that's an actual projection. That's not what the budget was. The column on the right, FY12, is the budget. The column on the left is the actual. You're comparing apples to oranges when you show the difference. This is to assume that what we spent last year was our budget. That's how you read this from a budgetary planning standpoint. That's what this reads as. The budget for overtime last year, the original budget for overtime this year, was $400,000. That should say plus 50K, not negative 110. I don't know who mentioned it last week, but they made a point of saying that this makes it look better than it really is. So that's a problem I have. We should start seeing budget numbers on here. These aren't budget numbers. Number 2, Chief Roy was before us last week. 6-year average unspent money in the fire department, $13,000. Every year he comes before us and says that he has no manpower, he's stretched thin, he doesn't have any wiggle room, and then he comes back to the city with nothing left, which makes sense to me, because a department that says they don't have money to do things should not have money left over. The police budget, on average, $275,000 a year left over. I don't understand why that is. I'm not facetious. I know that we plan things, and they don't happen the way we plan them, but this is a 6, 7, 8-year continual basis. This happens. In 2007, we returned $261,000 back to the city. This year, the way we've been spending, it looks like we're going to come in around $300K. But on average, it's $275. Every year, we return $275. I compare the police to the fire department. Fire department says they don't have enough guys. They don't have any money left. Police says they don't have enough guys. They've got $300K left almost, several $100,000. Now, if it's a 1 or 2 year occurrence, fine, but this is 6 years in a row this happens. And I would contest that the dispatching expenses doesn't need a supplemental budget. What you got on this page could cover them already, because I'm going to put my crystal ball on and say, you're going to return another $250,000 next year, or more than that. Maybe you could absorb this dispatchers in your own budget. I talked to a few officers last week who said that they are maxed out, they don't have, they like overtime, but they don't want to take it every week. It doesn't make sense that one public safety budget has zip, and the other one has so much. I have a problem with that. I'm not blaming anybody, I have an issue with that. Is it poor budget planning? Is it every year we expect things to happen and they don't happen, which would go back to my comment about maybe it's, the foresight's not fully there, but, no offense, Chief, but I don't think the police should have anything left over at the end of the year. You got 52 guys on the street, 2 in the schools. That's a good point, Council Caddy-Brook. It's not 54, it's 52. Why is the police returning over $250,000 a year back to the city? Can't you use that money?
Well, we could.
And are you being told, Chief, that you can't use it? Are you being told that you're frozen?
I think when you look at where most of that money's coming from, you're looking at the line item holidays. And unfortunately for us, we can't, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't predict the future. So when you look at the holiday, I sat here 2 years ago and last year, and clearly that's a significant amount of money that typically comes back to the city. I would think that's good budgeting, because we are not just taking that money and just spending on something we don't need. We're spending on, and if I could hire officers with that, I would. But clearly, during the course of when we put our budget together, we look at things that we may need during that course of the year. In the area of the holiday pay and incentives, it changes. Those 2 line items changes because an officer could work overtime, and then his incentive changes, or he doesn't work overtime and it gets lower. In the holiday pay, he might want to take time off versus in lieu of pay, and that's totally negotiated through contractual agreements from the city and the unions, and it's something that I quite honestly have to budget for, because I would think if I came back to you in a year from now and said, well, we need more money in incentive and holiday pay because every officer today wants to get paid for that, and I probably wouldn't get that.
Understood. 2008 and 2010, the holiday account was expended. There was nothing left in the holiday account in those 2 years. I'm looking back at the statistics. There was nothing left in the holiday accounts in 2008 and 2010. So no offense, Chief, to say that it's one account is a big part of it.
That's 2 accounts. Incentives one, and the
okay,
holidays
yeah, and
second.
incentives is one of the accounts.
Right.
I look at the fact that you guys have a lot of stuff in your contract that the firefighters do, not the same, but you have incentives, you have holiday pay. I just have an issue with how this occurs at the end of every year. Maybe I'm comparing apples to oranges, maybe I am, but it's a consistent thing, 6, 7 years in a row. All that money left over, and you are hemorrhaging people. So when the taxpayers hear this, when I hear this, and then I see the big bucket of money left, that upsets me. Because we had $3.1 million of free cash last year, and we put $1 million into stabilization. I have for years advocated that as a business, we should be putting some of the money back into the city. To have your guys out there, your men and women out there logging the hours they are, and then having $3 million plus left over is an insult to me. Instead of $1 million, maybe we could have put away $600,000 or $700K. It's still a far cry from what we normally used to put in there, but we weren't going to do that. Every year, $300K almost. I have a problem with that, because I look at the same comments, and for whatever reason, this is going to happen again. And I wish we could keep that money in your department. I wish we could analyze, once the budget is passed, what's really going to happen, and go out there and, I'll even contest the dispatchers. I think you can absorb those in this budget. No questions asked. I don't think a supplemental budget is needed. And my question to the mayor is, this budget has 3 dispatchers in it. What changed in the last couple of weeks? I mean, the administration knew we needed more than 3 dispatchers. Chief Demore's been clamoring for it, the union's been asking for it, we've been asking for it, and we got 3. Now we're getting a supplemental 2 or 3 weeks later. What changed? Where's that money going to come from?
The money's coming from debt service, unemployment, and FICA. Those are items that, very similar to holiday pay, we are very conservative. We don't know, for example, if somebody is unemployed, they might take their full 52 weeks out of the year. I think by April and May, we have a good idea of who may have gotten another job early. But I still think it's good budgeting. If somebody is owed full unemployment, then we should budget for the full unemployment. And if they get another job early and no longer take unemployment, that money's left over. Those are the types of things that end up with free cash. If there are, again, I've stated that we have conservative budgeting. Debt service, we delayed a little bit our bonding of the money for the capital plan that the councilors passed a while back. So, that has a little bit of money left over that we know that is not going to be there next year. So these are considered either one-time expenses or expenses that we don't know if are going to be available for the following years, or revenues that are going to be available for the following years. And you and I had a brief conversation. I think we had a conversation over text about this, so you're aware of some of this. But, that's money that would have been part of free cash for next year, so we are drawing down on free cash for next year. It's not going to be the $3 million that you've seen in previous years. A lot of the numbers you're quoting are high numbers, and they're quoting a lot of one-time expenses. They're also quoting funds that we anticipated getting at a certain date, and because the date was moved, it becomes part of free cash, even though we've already incorporated in our budget, so some of that's an accounting thing. But it is going to be considered one-time revenue that's used. It is a risk that we're taking because it also adds to the $850,000 in one-time revenue that I did put in this budget. So that $200,000 in addition to this means that there's $1 million in one-time revenue. So that's going to be a risk for the following year in saying that I've got to figure out how to have $1 million in one-time revenue made up. I typically make that up through free cash. So if we're already using $1 million in anticipated free cash that I'm not, we're even trying to see if we can even reach that number the next year, then we have nothing left over for snow and ice and so on. So, but these are all very conservative guesses. I would rather say that if somebody is owed holiday pay, that we budgeted. If somebody is owed unemployment, we can budget it. If there's a number in a contract, we budgeted. There's been cases, like with trash service, where we have an amount that we budgeted with waste management, where we did put in a little bit below. If you want to put in a lot below, again, that's really up in your hands if you want to be a little bit more risky and say that, I think that not everybody's going to use holiday pay, not everybody's going to use unemployment and cut those line items. But I would rather budget conservatively. That's been my tact, knowing that, again, these are areas that you guys could cut rather than add. I think it's easier for you guys to say, we're going to take a risk with unemployment, we're going to cut unemployment, rather than adding that. And then during the course, you can figure out areas that you'd like to see numbers added to, and then that can be part of a supplemental budget. So if all of us wrote a budget today, they'd all be different numbers. So this is your opportunity, again, to show me areas where you want to be a little bit more risky, maybe areas you want to be a little bit more conservative, but that's entirely up to you.
I never advocated we be risky. I'm advocating we budget what we're going to use. It's true it's a conservative budget, but we must not be looking at many, many years prior to this year of how these things have been going.
Can you predict when people are going to get jobs if they're on unemployment? I can't. I certainly can't do that. But like I said, if you want to say we're only going to budget 80%, we can talk about percentages, then we're happy to discuss those, or you guys can discuss if the budget's in your hand. You guys have the ability to cut.
Man, I'm not talking about unemployment. I'm talking about the police budget, okay, and all the other budget. I'm not talking about miscellaneous accounts. We don't use past history to budget our stuff. We just say, this is what the contract says, so this is what we're going to budget. Even though for 6 years in a row, we've spent 20% less than what the contracts have said. I have a problem with that. To me, that's not reality. That's what the document says, but it's not what really is going to happen. And again, when I say it's a disservice, I'm not talking about your budgeting practice or how you've run the department. It is a disservice from what was put forward to us because you guys need help. You guys are the number one priority, and you're not given that status right now. And it's insulting. Thank you.
Councilor Bove.
Thank you very much. Chief, on page 30, I just need an explanation on stipend professional standards. FY11 was 95,054, FY12, 282,021. That's a 197% difference.
Yeah, what we did this year through the collective bargaining agreement with the union and the city, we rolled in, it's now called, the stipend is actually called professional standards, and we rolled in the clothing allowance, the firearm safety, and in-service training stipends into one.
Okay, thank you.
All set, Norman? Councilor Reynolds.
Just a small aside, you mentioned that previous years, there was much less money spent, much more money spent on photography, and I happen to have the 2006 budget with me, where it was $7,000 spent on camera work that year, $2,500 this year. Just corroborates what you said. I have a question for Mr. Saracen, if I may. In these budgets, there's, frequently we see lines written in red ink, and they refer to special grants. Could you provide us a list of the grants in the budget?
Yeah, I could, yes, I
And,
can
this-
contact the departments and...
Thank you, I'd appreciate that. And this is a general fund report, and why are grants in there at all? This is reviewing monies that we've taken in and monies that we spend, but
I think-
ordinarily it doesn't include grants, does it?
No, it is a separate fund, you are correct. I think the intent is to provide the council, the mayor, or the mayor wants to present a full picture of the full complement of the department, and then that way you can see the total picture. If the grants were not shown, then you wouldn't know how many officers, you would need other supplemental information to give you that. This way it's all on one budget, and we show the gross amount, and then we subtract out below that the grants.
And does the lines in red in this entire report include all the grants that the city receives?
No.
So I'm asking for all the grants that the city receives.
Well, I could provide you a separate report on Munis, the Munis system. There's a number of grants.
So in fact, the city budget is not the 95 million of what's here. We're actually,
Yeah, we...
what could you estimate?
I would say if you added all grants and all the enterprise funds, you're talking about $120, $130 million per year.
Thank you.
Yep.
That is the whole picture, so I think
Right,
it
I
would
mean,
help us to see the whole picture.
Yes, and some grants are not part of an operating budget, per se. They may run into multiple years, and
But
they may
still, it's
not
part of
fund
the picture.
positions. They may fund a separate program and so forth. But we have that information on a system. I think I'll try to give you a report that shows all the grants, and then if you have any questions, please let me know.
Right.
Okay?
And I recall, Chief, that you came before us when you were new to the city, and you had an elaborate changing of the scheme of the way that the police department was going to be run. So I want to ask you if the numbers of patrol officers, we keep speaking of 54 and 52, but the total number of officers is 72, I believe. Right, officers with different ranks. If we were to, first of all, again, when you were here, you referred to a recommendation, I don't know if it was a national recommendation by police, as to how many officers we should have in the city. Can you recall that figure?
For 1,000 population,
1.8 per thousand?
roughly around 80, I believe, that would be,
And that would be including all patrol?
top to bottom,
Top to bottom, 1.8, and that would equal about 80?
I believe.
And we're at 72.
Oh, I'm sorry, that would be just patrol officers. We're not talking command staff, that's patrol officers.
Patrol,
Yeah.
and does it recommend command staff? Are there figures nationally recommended?
I don't know if any studies have been like that. and give you a copy.
That would be good to know, but, so we're, national recommendation is 80, and we're at 52, or
Correct.
4, however you use. So that's quite a dip. Now, if we did, in the budget, provide monies for an increase to 80, that's one patrol officer per 1.8 thousand residents.
Per 1,000.
Well, you used the figure 1.8.
1.8 per 1,000 residents.
1.8 per 1,000 residents, per 1,000 residents. Would your schemata that you presented remain the same? It could absorb all of those? Do
With the
you recall when you
deployment plan?
Pardon?
Would the deployment plan
Yes.
change?
Yeah, right.
Well, naturally, if we were going to get an increase of 20 officers, would we change our deployment plan? Absolutely. I think one of the
More than
things...
20, right.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I did mention back then was that we flattened out the organization, and that really helped us to get the structure built, so information would go from the top, from the chief's office down to the newest patrol officer, or to the newest civilian. And our command staff is represented by civilians, patrol officers, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, deputy, and the chief. So it covers all rank. Prior to that change, it was typically captains and the chief.
Right, and you did that, I believe, to fit the needs that you were presented with at the time. So I'm saying, should we get up to snuff, should we get this up to where it ought to be, perhaps your command staff would change somehow, or your schemata?
I think the deployment issue would change. I don't know if the command staff...
The deployment issue, right. Perhaps I'm using inaccurate police terminology there. And that's all the questions that I had. Thank you.
Council Solomito.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is through you to Mr. Saracen. I believe at least 2 times in the past year, there's been a request to transfer funds from free cash to unemployment to cover the increase because unemployment benefits were extended, correct? And I remember we had a long debate one time. I know that Councilor Di Natale voiced an opinion that the government extends the benefits and yet we pay the bill.
Yeah,
But it was...
Yeah, the year before was or the year before that, I don't remember the year, but one year we had to go up 300,000. This year, let me just find the account. We started at 450,000, and then it was reduced to 390,000. And it looks like, right now, it looks like we may spend around 300,000 in that account, and I believe, as the mayor pointed out, we may take some money out of this account to help fund the dispatches for next year.
But so it's gone from 450,000?
450,000 was the original budget, and it's been reduced by 60,000 to 390,000 to date.
And yet it may go down again to 300,000,
No, what I'm saying is we may spend around 300,000.
meaning that's what you need.
Correct.
So you're going down from $450,000 and you'll actually spend $300,000.
Estimate.
Right.
Yes.
What happens if, or is there anything contingent if our obligations increase?
Well, we're billed monthly, and the last bill was about 35,000, and we have the balances through the end of April, the end of May, but we still owe for May and June, so we could be spending another 70,000 based on the last bill. And there aren't any new people being laid off. It's more, people that have been on for a while, or they're back on because of extensions.
So it would be foolish to budget more than $300,000 for the next fiscal year for unemployment benefits?
Well, I believe the budget proposal is 400,000, because not only do you have the present population, but the schools, they may be laying off people. I think they're cutting back some hours for some staff, and that could result in unemployment also. And you could have further extensions by the federal government.
Would my-
Counselor, is this in relationship to the police budget?
Yes, it
Because-
does.
Okay, because we will have an opportunity
And
to
the
discuss
reason I'm
this.
going is if there's that much money left over in the unemployment budget to pay for civilian dispatches, why was that not expended 9 months ago or 10 months ago, when we knew we weren't going to spend anywhere near $400,000? Why couldn't that money have been transferred for dispatches 9 months ago? We are into shootings every single day here in Fitchburg. I mean, it's a dangerous area. Why wasn't that money transferred then, once you knew we weren't going to spend the money?
We didn't know. With the federal government changing the rules 1 year, like I said, it went up 300,000. We had to come back to the council. So it's very volatile with the feds changing the rules, the stimulus money, and then they extend benefits for people under their programs, and then we pretty much are abide by those rules. And let me just add that I think one of the line items that wasn't mentioned to help fund the FY12 dispatches is from the police budget. I think it's 42,000? Right.
Yes.
So of that transfer, besides the debt service and the unemployment and FICA, we also did go to the police department to see what they felt comfortable with transferring at this time. So that was also transferred out, part of the package.
My next question, or I guess it's a comment piggybacking Councilor Di Natale, there is enough money in the police overtime budget to pay for the dispatches without a supplemental budget, and I would be opposed to a supplemental budget. There's enough money in there, in that budget, to pay for it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Counselor Joseph?
Just a couple of things. You had mentioned earlier that once we get dispatches, you don't feel that if you have extra officers on a shift, you would pay overtime for another dispatcher to fill in for a dispatcher as opposed to a police officer going back and doing a dispatch? Once they're out of dispatch, you're not going to use them for dispatch?
Oh, would they be used, I mean, I believe we're still negotiating part of that in the ongoing contracts that we have going with the union now. But the hope is to have the dispatches and have overtime on a line item for dispatching overtime. Will there be times that police officers have to fill in? Absolutely. I mean, that's going to happen. Someone's going to be home raking the yard and twist their ankle, and someone's on vacation at the same time, and that's only one person left on that shift. We're going to have to fill in the positions.
I just remember overtime being out of control for dispatchers, and I would prefer that if you have a dispatcher line for overtime, you keep it at $1, and then go from there, because you're going to, if you start spending more money on overtime, then they're going to cost themselves out of business.
Correct.
So be careful. That's if you need 12 of them in order to have no overtime, go with 12 of them to have no overtime, but don't. I would strongly suggest not to get budgeting overtime for them already before they even start, so that they're up to $72,000, $80,000 a person for a year, okay? Get another police officer and save the overtime.
I mean, we're going to monitor that. That's, I think, there was lack of monitoring the overtime last time.
Yeah.
And then once again, I always go to this, contractually, you're obligated to follow what that contract said.
Well, and get
We're very
overtime
careful.
out of that contract.
But we're very careful with the contract now.
I mean, get overtime out of that contract, and if you're going to have budget $60,000 for overtime, budget it for a police officer that's going to fill in and dispatch if they need it. But be careful. I know you guys live it, I don't live it, but just be careful about the budgeting overtime for dispatchers. Just hopefully the people that can work in dispatch will help fill in the officers. When we had our go-around about CDBG monies and wanting to put more monies from CDBG onto police officers to patrol the downtown area, is there a different plan with those 9 police officers to have a patrol officer in the downtown area? Because that wasn't the time to talk about it, but this is the time to talk about it.
We will look at that as part of the next bid that starts in January. By then, the officers will probably be back on the street for 2 months. So we'll look at that and needless to say, consider it, because that's all I hear from a lot of people, is that the lack of a presence downtown. And that will be something we look at.
I would strongly ask that you could do something like that for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, Deputy Chief, I only have 2 more things. One is, I noticed there's no line item for motorcycle equipment spending. Where does that fall
The
into?
equipment?
Yes, the motorcycle?
Mostly, everyone that is driving a motorcycle has the equipment now.
Okay.
So it's you buy it once and that's all.
So we're all equipped with headpieces, helmets, everything, we're all
Yeah.
set with that? Okay. The other thing is, Chief, you just touched on is the downtown patrolling. Last Thursday morning, I was contacted by a longtime business owner on Main Street, and I made an effort to stop by, spend an hour, a little over an hour discussing with the owner, and I was told that the business was broken in twice in a week. That is a very concerning issue. When we have a lot of empty business shops on Main Street, we want to do everything in our power to retain the businesses we have currently on Main Street. So I don't know if you have a plan in place to put more patrolling on Main Street, but that goes to the point where, and I'll reiterate again at the beginning of this meeting, was that I still believe you should advocate to keep the $152,000 on the patrol officers line item in the budget and use that to hire new officers to replace the one you've lost, in addition to the plan with hiring civilian dispatchers. I think it's crucial that you keep that amount in that line item there within this budget and not lose it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Conry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since we're talking about dispatchers, probably somebody would say, don't go there, but now that we are looking at funding dispatchers, we have at least 2 people in these chambers tonight who could possibly be in the corner office in January. And I would just like to say that we've been talking about combining dispatching in the city of Fitchburg since I've been on the council the past 6 years. I understand there is some resistance in some cases, but I would hope that whomever is in the mayor's office in January will take a serious look at combining dispatching in the city of Fitchburg to save money for the city. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the chief or the deputy chief? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I presume you're just going to do a flip here. You know me then. Moving on, we'll go to city clerk, page 9. City clerk personnel, $220,997. City clerk expenses, $3,725. Total city clerk, $224,722. Madam Clerk, any comment before questions?
I have no comments, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Di Natale.
Mrs. Farrell, what, document restoration storage, why is that going down so much?
I was asked to take some money out of that when we were looking at the budget, and I did.
It's a lot of money. It's the whole thing.
Well, it was high this year because of what we did with that room, when we had all the books demolded. It was exceptionally high this year.
Is it your professional opinion that 500 is going to be enough?
It's enough to do the bare minimum. It doesn't even scratch the surface with what really needs to be done. It's enough to bind minutes books that we will have through the year. It doesn't do anything for taking care of a lot of the records that are down there or expanding storage area.
So I'll just come out and say that's going to be a supplemental item down the road, is that? Because bare minimum, I mean, you've never even come close to spending that amount in terms of less. You've always been way above that. So that's grossly inadequate. I had a chance a few months ago to go down to the vault area, and it is like a scene from a video game. It's a dungeon down there. Terrifying. Has there been a submission to the Capital Planning Commission to more storage space? Because the way we've got things right now, I don't know where else you guys are putting stuff. I don't know if there's a secret room in this building, but I talked to some of your workers too. I mean, we're stacking it up one after another against the wall. I mean, I don't know how you guys find things in there, to be honest with you. Has it been submitted? Has there been a capital request?
I believe that is on the roster, the Capital Improvement Commission. I don't know where it is in the priority list.
Okay. Just one more thing here. I just want to congratulate your staff and your department on your revenue collections. The revenue budget for your area was $101.5 thousand. You've collected $23,000 more than what you were anticipating to collect for revenue, and that's good news, and that's been a consistent thing, so it's a testament to how hard you and your employees are working and getting as much revenue into the city coffers as possible, so thank you.
Council Starr.
Well said, thank you.
Any other questions for the city clerk? Moving forward, page 8, City Council. City Council Personal Services, $99,000. City Council expenses, $19,875. Total, $118,875. Councilor Di Natale.
Is the advertising budget going up by 18% because of the open meeting law requirements now?
No.
What's the reason for the advertising?
Cost of advertising. We've had a lot of ordinance changes over the past few years, and the cost of advertising keeps going up every year also.
What does the newspaper charge for advertising? For a regular ad that you usually have to put in, what does that come to?
I can't tell you what it is per inch, but as an example, the trash ordinance that was advertised a few weeks ago was $2,400.
Wow. Because our budget this year is $11,080, and we've spent about 10 grand. So a quarter of our advertising budget was on one ordinance? Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Joseph.
Was there help when we did the redistricting? That one was put in the paper this past week. Was that paid for by the city, or was that paid?
Paid for by the city.
And that was a full-page ad, wasn't it?
Another $2,400 ad.
And that wasn't, no help from anybody because we were asked or told to do that. Okay.
Any other questions on page 8? Moving forward to the License Commission, page 11. License Board Personal Services, $6,200. License Board Expenses, $2,750. Total license, $8,960. Counsel Salamino.
Is there a reason why nobody from that commission is here?
The clerk for the License Commission is here.
Oh, is it normally done by you? I know that Mr. Judge has already made a presentation, always, hasn't he?
Mr. Judge has been here in past years. He does have a family emergency
all right.
unfolding as we speak.
All right, then, Miley.
Any other questions on the License Commission? Moving forward to elections, page 10. Elections Personal Services, $40,264. Election expenses, $36,200. Election total, $76,464. Any questions on the elections? I guess I'll only have one, Madam Clerk. Does the budget anticipate just this straight election in November, or does that include the possibility of a preliminary election for the city?
It includes preliminary.
It includes a preliminary. Any other?
And the presidential primary in March, that's why it's higher.
Right.
This is 3.
Any other questions regarding the election page?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion second to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, councilors.